nation. And Barack did it too, so it's Obama's nation. What the fuck would he have mercy?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Taz. Tonight, we are getting into one of our monthly roundtables, the Native Roundtable. And I have some wonderful people here tonight to help educate you on their community. Let me bring them on now. Good evening, everyone. So I'll have everyone introduce themselves. Let's start with Native Wolf. Go ahead and introduce yourself. You want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Fine. I pass my name. I live in Waterville. Yeah. Really much to say.
Okay. No problem. And dun 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 dun. Time and Dog.
Danjo, she Laura, she Clay, she Lapine. Hello, my name's Laura, and I'm Lapana Apache, and I live in southern Indiana and on Miami land.
Before I get into questions we weren't able to get to last month, is there any topic that you all are like, you know what? Let me address this right out the gate.
I can't think of anything.
Okay. Oops. Answering people all at the same time. First things up. We've heard a lot of different conflicting things regarding the Native communities and the pandemic. From your experience, how did the federal government handle the Native community as far as the pandemic and even down to making sure that there was a rollout for vaccinations?
I mean, they handled it terribly. I mean, if you look at COVID death rates by race, Indigenous is the number one. You know, we have the highest death rates out of any race affected by COVID. And part of that is because, when the pandemic first hit and they rolled out the, COVID relief funding, tribes were supposed to be like tribal healthcare, IHS healthcare was supposed to be allotted. I don't remember the exact dollar amount off the top of my head, but tribal healthcare, IHS, was supposed to be allotted a certain amount for healthcare and for COVID relief. And that was delayed in getting to tribes, so much so that I think another government agency had to step in and tell them to release the funds. And then there were tribal healthcare programs that were asking for COVID relief, asking for PPE, at the beginning of the pandemic, and were literally sent body bags. They asked for ventilators, they asked for PPE, and they were sent body bags. And then towards this end of the pandemic, so we have astronomical death rates, and you also look at other barriers to things when it comes to the pandemic is like if you look at the Navajo reservation, large portions of the Diné reservation don't have running water. It's hard to wash your hands when you don't have running water. And so that's another issue that Native tribal governments are up against. And so then on this end of the pandemic, when it comes to vaccinations, we also have the highest vaccination rate per race. But a lot of that is due in large part to tribal governments making sure their citizens are getting vaccinated. It's not due to anybody but that. It is the tribal government and tribal programs making sure tribal citizens are getting vaccinated.
I do know that in some rural areas, there are pharmacists that are volunteering their own transportation, excuse me, and some of their employees to ensure that people are vaccinated. Have they extended that to any Native communities that you're aware of?
I'm not sure. I know a lot of the tribal nations, when they first started getting the vaccinations, were basically doing kind of like drive-through situations where, you know, you would just come and get your shot. I know a lot of because I don't live on my tribal homelands, but I know a lot of relatives of mine who are down south were going to these sort of drive-through vaccine situations. I know that's how the Navajo Reservation did it because I have a lot of friends down there. Of course, every tribe's going to do it differently, but I did see a lot of people talking about it being done that way. Because a lot of reservations are very, very rural. Unfortunately, when it comes to only the majority of Native American people are not reservation native. The majority of Native American people in the United States are urban natives. So a lot of people did travel back to their home to get reservations, or people like myself. I live 700 miles from the nearest Indian Health Services. So going to an Indian Health Services IHS clinic is not an option for me. Like I had some issues yesterday with having to get emergency dental care. That was a nightmare. And I was talking to my friend about it. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, I always just go to the IHS. And I'm like, going to the IHS is not an option for me, because the closest IHS for me is Minneapolis. So I live in kind of a desert for Indian Health Services.
Oh.
So for a lot of people in my situation in the Midwest or on the East Coast, we don't have access to IHS healthcare and that kind of thing. So like I got my vaccination from Walmart, and I just had to wait till it was available in my age group in the area. But for people who do live on reservation lands or live close to IHS, they were able to get it that way.
What about you, Native Fox? Have you had an issue during the pandemic with healthcare and getting access?
A lot of people actually here are getting the same way. They're going to like random places like Walgreens or something just to get their shot, as well as Walmart. My room actually got hers from Walmart, and it's just there's a lot of stuff that's not really talked about, especially and a lot on our side. We get stuck with a lot of people who just don't want to learn anything. They don't want to like educate themselves on how bad we so the situation with us is that the reservations, they're not getting what they want and what they need, and like hers, they're not getting stuff they're supposed to get. They're getting like, oh well, if you have a need for vaccinations and stuff, well, you can't have it. And me, I can't take it yet because it's not in our age group yet. So we're stuck.
And
like aside from the vaccinations and stuff, the services that we're supposed to get, we're not getting them.
And given that they're not giving you proper tools and things like that, and since you're in an age group that hasn't been cleared to receive the vaccination yet, what are you doing to help protect yourself at the moment? Native Wolf.
Yeah, you cut out. Hold on. You're not repeating.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said since you're not getting proper resources and you're not in the age bracket that has been cleared to get the vaccination at this point, what are you doing to help protect yourself at this point?
As far as like protection, we get like masks from like random places like Walmart, grains or anything like, or like masks, gloves, Germex, and all that other stuff. We're getting those, but we're not getting them from the government. We're not getting like services and stuff. We have to go purchase them ourselves. But for me, I have masks. I have like K9, but I got that from Hannaford.
Yeah.
At least it works, right?
And like in your situation, for those of us that are not native and not on a reservation, how would we be able to help you to make sure that you and your community is safe?
You know, a lot of urban areas that
well, most often your choices are to take care of yourself and make sure not exposing yourself to other people by using masks and PPE.
A lot of urban areas do have American Indian centers.
People.
Oh, sorry. So a lot of urban areas do have American Indian centers. So where I live, about an hour north of me, is the Indianapolis American Indian Center. They do get like federal funding, grant funding, and that kind of thing. And they support Native American people in the state of Indiana. So they not only help support people through, they've got all kinds of programs. They've got like job training programs for people who need job services. When I was in school, I got a scholarship through them that my son, who's going to college next year, is applying for and is able to get when he goes to college next year. So there are a lot of places, like a lot of urban centers. I know there's one in Chicago, Louisville. So a lot of large cities will have American Indian centers. So if you want to be able to help support Native American communities in your area, you can do that by seeing what the Indian Center in your area needs to help support the Native community. A lot of Indian centers will even have like a food pantry. Honestly, I grew up on government commodities as well as food from food pantries. I was dirt poor when I was a kid. So we had like, not only did we have like the government cheese and stuff, but we also had stuff from food pantries and that kind of thing. So the, Indian Center that is near me has, they have like a food pantry. They have all kinds of services that they offer Native American people in the state of Indiana. And they do, because of COVID over the last year and a half now, they've switched to making a lot of their services more virtual as well. So I think for people who want to help the Native community but don't really know how, or maybe don't know where, if you're in an urban area, like say, for example, you're in Indianapolis. Well, I don't know where the Native community here is. There's no reservations in the state of Indiana. I don't know where the natives are, Call the local Indian Center and say, hey, I want to help the Native community in Indiana. What can I do? What do you guys need? And I think that that's a great way to help support the Native community in your area.
Yeah. We have Vicki joining us, and let me get your
Cincinnati. There's a friendly house. They're called friendly houses, and in Cincinnati, there's a community garden in Cincinnati. There's they're associated with AIM, but a lot of them are like friendly houses, and so you'll see a lot of like the word coalition. Coalition is attached to it, so you might not see something called American Indian, like Diamond Dog saying. You might see something like a Native American or Indigenous Peoples Coalition or something like that, but they're in every state. She's right. They're in every state. So
there's also another question that we weren't able to get to last month in our monthly go round, and that was, why don't Native people like or trust passports? A lot of people had that question.
Okay. So that was probably my rant that I went on, and I know Diamond Dog was in our discussion last month. So um I don't know. I can't speak for everyone. This is just me. So we typically we don't believe in borders. We do not believe in borders. And Diamond Dog is the historian here, so I can lean on her a little bit, you know. But as far as my tribe is concerned, we migrated, we followed, you know, we're fishermen, right? So we followed the
Mhm.
seasons, we followed, you know, the schools of fish and where they would go. So, you know, you start in the north and you travel down, you know, and you go into, you know, where the lobster are, and then you start going down into where the scallops are and the cod down, you know, in Massachusetts, and then the soft shell crab in Maryland. So, you know, and that's just one example. Um, but you started, you know, tribes will originate, and you look at the plains tribes, you know, and they, you know, if they're from Mexico, you know, and they migrated. And I mean, Diamond Dog's way better at this than I am. Okay. So I'm giving you the very raw version, but, you know, they migrated from central Mexico. They migrated, you know, and they migrated upward. And I can only guess that a lot of it is out of necessity. It's out of gathering. It's out of hunting. It's out of need. It's, you know, climate. A lot of people moved for climate. You know, you'll see tribes didn't just say, oh, here I am in the great state of North Dakota, and this is where I'm going to live for the next 400 years. You know,
Mm.
there were no state lines, there were no boundaries. This was all one big land. And then that's when you start seeing, you know, intertribal, you know, people are crossing paths. We weren't meant to live in houses. You know, we're not meant to live in an HOA. You know, people moved all around, and moving around allows the community, allows people to be able to survive based on living outside, you know, the foliage and the nuts and the berries and the things that were, you know, that are available to them. And there's resources, and there's so many tribes that crossed the United States, you know, crossed the plains because they followed the buffalo. And that's why there's so many plains tribes where, you know, the buffalo is it's sacred to them. And, you know, you'll see it in a lot of depictions, you'll see it in a lot of drawings, you'll see it in a lot of, you know, in a lot of art, um, in a lot of the, even like in the patterns, you know, we were talking about patterns. So I personally don't believe in borders, and that's when you get the whole no one is illegal on stolen land
Mhm.
campaign. You know, when you see people coming, you know, and they're crossing the borders, you know, the wet foot dry land thing from Cuba. I mean, that's when you start seeing that. So, of course, you know, we have to comply. I still haven't gotten my passport yet. But I mean, you know, you're being forced to comply into something that our people and indigenous peoples never, we don't believe in it. I mean, I don't believe in it. I was raised not to believe in it. And that goes back to kind of like the Jay Treaty thing, which I was talking about. You know, me growing up and spending every summer on the res in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, um, we would just hop on the ferry and scoot over there. And there wasn't a, you have to show your birth certificate, you have to show who you are. It wasn't any of that. You're just, hey, I'm Micmac, I'm using the Jay Treaty to cross over into Canada. And you got on and you got, you know, you got on and you got off. And, you
Hmm.
know, that's just the way it was. Post 9/11, it's not like that anymore. You know, they started moving over to IDs, and then they started, you know, passports have always kind of been a thing, but, you know, it's a necessity now. Now you have the real ID with your driver's license. And it's more, it's drilling it all the way down, you know, to where, you know, it goes back to the, you're a number, you have a social security number, you know, and you, that's a whole topic for a different day. But I don't know, Diamond Dog, is that kind of like, and Native Wolf, I'm sorry I didn't address you. and I just kind of jumped in here, but I was on another live. But am I off? Am I too far off?
No,
Generally speaking,
I don't think you're off. So like for my so okay, back up a little bit. One of the biggest myths
No, you're
perpetuated in the North American education system is Native Americans didn't have a concept of land ownership. Okay? Like, how many people have heard that myth? Native Americans didn't have a concept of land ownership. And it's used as a justification for colonization. Well, it's okay we took their land. They didn't believe they owned it anyway. Well, Native Americans did have a concept of land ownership, but not only was it more communal, but it was also people lived seasonally in different locations. And Europeans didn't understand that. So like Victoria's people, they lived, in the north in one area, and then they traveled south with the schools of fish. And I'm Apache, and most people don't think of Apache as buffalo hunters, but the Lipan Apache, we are literally known as the Apache buffalo hunters because we are the Southern Plains Apache.
Okay.
And so we are buffalo hunters, and Apaches were nomadic as well. But if you look at not just Lipan Apache people, but all Athabascan people. So Apache and Navajo are Athabascan people. 1,000 years ago, our ancestors were in Canada and Alaska. And over the last, over a couple hundred years period of time, the people who became the Navajo and Apache came down from Canada and Alaska and then settled in the Southwest. And then the people who became the Navajo decided they wanted to settle down and start farming. And then my people said, we want to continue following herds. And so we split off into two tribes. And then there are several different Apache tribes, and those are all different groups of traveling Apache tribes. And even within our traveling tribes, there are smaller and smaller and smaller groups when you get down into band and clan and all of that. Okay. And a lot of people don't understand that, but we still had land that was ours. So we had Lipan land here, and yeah, it overlapped with Comanche over here and Kickapoo over here and this over here, but it was still our land, and our land straddles the United States and Mexico border. And so when I was a kid, we used to be able to go, because we don't have a Jay Treaty like Canada natives do. And so when I was a kid, we used to be able to travel back and forth between the United States and Mexico, whether it was just for vacation or people, wanting to go for ceremony with just a birth certificate. Well, now you can't do that. You have to have a passport. And there is a fence that divides my homeland that not only does it affect the people who travel back and forth for ceremony to visit family. I have cousins on the Mexico side that are Apache, but they're listed as Mexican and I'm listed as American, but we're both Apache, and so we didn't get a treaty like the Jay Treaty for Mexican natives, and border natives on the Mexican.
It doesn't mean shit now.
Right. And so,
it doesn't mean anything now.
There are a lot of tribes on the U.S.-Mexico border. There's my tribe, Comanche, Kumeyaay, O'Dam. There are a lot of tribes that straddle the U.S.-Mexico border, and we're all being affected, especially by this border wall. It took a 15-year legal battle for one elder to get one gate and one key on our treaty land.
Oh my goodness.
So, it's been an ongoing struggle. But so prior to all of this, and that's the other thing too, the Mexican border didn't even used to be where it is. And not just when they moved it, but when the Treaty of Guadalupe Purchase happened, they set the border where the border currently is now with piles of stones. Okay. And they said, okay, this is the new United States and Mexico border. And then people didn't like where it was, so they moved it, sometimes by miles. And we're talking the 1840s here. And so sometimes they were like, well, I don't want this going through my land here. I'm going to move this pile of stones 2 miles that way. So the lines are just arbitrary. But either way, they still cut through our homelands, and where our people have always been able to freely travel up until, I mean, literally, the Apache Wars didn't end until my grandma's lifetime in the 1930s. Like my great grandmother's lifetime was still the Apache. My great grandparents were still in the time of the Apache Wars. So it's literally only been 2 generations since these were, you know, done being fought in a physical combat sense.
And Native
Yeah, the
Wolf, your
borders are.
stance on passports, because I know you had started to say something.
Well, for me, it's a little bit different because my group is Passamaquoddy, and there's currently 2 parts of the tribe, and they're in 2 different locations. Like ours more so fishermen, so we usually follow the fish as well. But as far as like, you know, boundaries and stuff, yeah, it can bother a lot of cultures and a lot of tribes that, you know, follow those types of animals and stuff, and it can ruin a lot of relationships with family, and people think it's okay, it's go get a passport and wander, like on some things that I got like most dresses mostly, and for mine, as far as right now, my family is kind of like blocked off from our original tribe because of the happened less than 3 decades ago. And as everybody knows this, the residential schools. My grandmother was able to end up going there. So, you know, we got lost. We lost our way pretty much. But as far as me, I'm trying to reconnect and learn more about my culture and so forth. I already know, you know, we're usually stayed around this area and traveled around Maine and so on and so. But yeah, boundaries are one that has bothered a lot of people, especially the tribes. I mean, we've got the travel of I can't remember the name of it, but they go all the way down to Mexico, join wow or whatever from all tribes, and because of the whole bounding and of course the 9/11 thing, it cut a lot of restrictions, and it doesn't really help at all.
And I'm glad you brought up reconnecting. I know that there are a lot of native languages that are, for
Yes.
lack of a better word, dying off. What's being done to help protect those languages?
Fine.
Nothing. Well, I don't want to say nothing. There is a tribe in just south of Nevada. They only have 35 members. After these 35 members are gone, they're enrolled members. That's going to be the it of their tribe. That's going to be it. That's going to be it. There's not any more, you know, that whole native tribe and everybody that is Paiute it's over. So that's why you're going to see a lot of, especially younger people. You see it all over TikTok. You know, everybody is trying to reconnect. They're getting into their grandma's heads, you know, trying to learn your language, trying to catch up on history, trying to be like, oh my God, I can't believe I missed so much. You know, learning the stories, learning, you know, how do I address an elder? Do I walk behind them? Do I look down? You know, there's so many things to it. And there's a lot of things to learn. And I'm going to tell you what, you know, whether it's whatever type of art it is. I mean, you see this one right above me, Diamond Dog. She's been beading ever since she was, ever since she could thread a needle. There is absolutely nothing easy about anything that natives do. It all takes work. It all takes time. I mean, from birch baskets to making baskets to, stripping canoes to stripping bark to tanning hides to making drums to, making these beaded earrings. Everything is a skill, to cooking, to the language, to the music, to dancing, to regalia, to, just everything it's not, none of it is easy. None of it is easy. Everything is hard because everything is so traditional. You can't just, you know, Diamond Dog can't just go to that sewing machine that she has probably behind her and stitch something up real quick and be like, oh, here you go. Because, that's what Amazon is for. That's what you want a dream catcher. I'm working on one. I've got it right here. You have to, it takes time. It's hours and hours and hours. Beaded moccasins, that's why they're so expensive, because it takes hours. Learning a language, it takes a very long time. Girl, I got, don't even get me started. I had to go get more, I had to get the right thread today. I went on a hunt. It takes a lot of practice, trial and error, especially if you don't have one, if you don't have a mentor, if you don't have someone, teaching you or trying to at least maybe guide you, then you're stuck on Google or you're learning books or you're trying to find out how, what are the patterns of my tribe? How do I do this? And everybody, social media is a wonderful, beautiful place because there's so many things that is out there for people to learn. I mean, I even think Diamond Dog does a beading class. I know a bunch of natives that do beading, does bead with me type thing online. If you want to learn how to bead, if you want to learn, I saw a stripping cedar off a tree tutorial thing on TikTok. It was actually pretty cool. But here's the thing about reconnecting, and this is just my personal take on it. It's out there. It is available. You may have to find, you may have to dig, you got to want it. At the end of the day, you can have, it's one of those, you can lead a man to water kind of thing. You can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink it. You have to want it. Like, you really have to want it. And you have to, you work 40 hours a week and you come home and you want to plop down on the couch and turn on Netflix or watch the show, or, I'm a Law and Order and CSI. I just want to plop down on the bed and just zone out and scroll through my TikTok videos and comment here and there and clown somebody and, and go to bed and do it all over again. But if you're really trying to reconnect, you have to make the time to do it. You have to make the time. You have to educate, whether it's reading a book or, whether it's learning how to bead and figuring out, what bead size do I do this, or, and natives are so much more than just beading, and it's patterns or, whatever it is, if it's cooking, if it's, painting or, but, it's the Indian crafts. The American Indian crafts are what, everybody kind of has in their head, other than the languages. I speak a little, but I take an online class every week to learn Mi'kma'ki, to learn it. And there's a TikToker, I think his name is Jay Walker, I think is his. He does a word of the day. He does a 60-second video, a word of the day. But you're not speaking that. If you're not speaking that native language to someone every day, how are you going to, our brains don't work like that. When you're young, you pick up on stuff really easy. So you have to You have to put in the work. And then that's my question to your viewers, is if you are reconnecting, what are you doing to put in the work? How do you put in the work? And everybody's like, well, I just don't know where to start. No one that is reconnecting knows where to start. You just begin. And then you dive in, and then you say, like, okay, well, I know how to make fry bread now. Or, you know what? Now I know how to say, Quay. I know how to say hello. I know how to say I love you. I know how to say this. I know how to say that. And it just, you have to put that first step forward, whether it's learning your tribal history or learning another person's tribal history. Like I had no idea. I know about the Apache Wars, but I just learned something new tonight, so guess what I get to do, because I'm interested and I want to know, more about her tribe. I know all about mine. I might not speak the language. I'm working on that. I might not, know everything, but where I'm at in my personal journey is I want to broaden my knowledge of other people around me. Because at the end of the day, I think natives are really all about community. We're communal, where we're inclusive. And I don't know about the Apache because honestly, I've never been on that side of the country. I don't know anything about the Plains other than what you see and read and hear. And it's interesting to me. And you have to be interested. You have to be interested if you're going to learn.
Exactly.
You have to want it. You have to want it. It's just knowledge. Knowledge is power, and there's truth to power when you know something and you feel it. And as you progress, it becomes a part of you and it adjusts your spirit, because your spirit is becoming more, I don't know what the word is, of who you're supposed to be. Your self-identity and
Awakened
becomes more.
Yeah, awakening is a great word, Native Wolf.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Yeah.
like awaken.
And
Yeah, that's perfect.
to your question about languages too, and it also really depends on the tribe. I know Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma, like my friend Wade, like if there are any people watching this podcast who want to learn to speak Cherokee, my friend Wade Gillespie, he has a TikTok channel where he teaches Cherokee, and that's what he does professionally. Like he teaches the Cherokee language at a school that is like a Cherokee immersion school. And I know that there are Ojibwe immersion schools where the kids are all day only speaking the native language. And I think that, some nations, some tribes are better at that than others. You look at my tribe, on the other hand, our total population of the entire Lenape Nation is about 8,000 people. We could not fill an entire football stadium with every single living Lenape person. So we don't really have the resources or ability or population size to even have that kind of efforts for language. And I remember, gosh, it was probably about 15 or 16 years ago, our tribal historian, her name was Nancy, and she was an amazing woman. She was talking about wanting working on these language revitalization program. And she was going to get language materials together for the whole tribe to be able to have at their disposal and downloadable and all of this. And then she passed away suddenly from an aneurysm.
Oh, God.
And so that never happened. And she's written 3 books about our tribe. She was our tribal historian. So excited that I was following in her footsteps. She was like a huge mentor of mine. And so, when she passed away, the whole language revitalization efforts just kind of fell out the window. But in the last couple of years, a small group of people, myself included, have worked on working on learning the language. Like, I did not grow up knowing more than 5 words in Apache, you know? So we meet weekly on Zoom, and I've got my like workbook, and I've got my big thick Apache dictionary, and because prior to us meeting weekly on Zoom, I could like introduce myself, ask you how you are,
Right.
Say a few other things here and there, but I couldn't really do much more than that. But since the last, several months, year or so that we've been doing this weekly Zoom, I have a whole huge vocabulary that I didn't used to have. And I have a couple elders that I can go to now and be like, hey, can you help me translate this? I've been having a little trouble here. Actually, even last year went to one of my elders and I was like, hey, can you help me translate Black Lives Matter? And he's like, oh my God, yes, I can't wait to help you work on this. And we translated that together,
That's
and
wonderful.
So it doesn't directly translate into Apache, but we came up with a really great translation. And so yeah, like, and I'm learning the language, and I've got elders who are helping me, and then other people who are in my age range who are working on it together. And so, it really depends on the tribe. And it's interesting because, I'm grateful that I was born and raised with Apache culture. But my mom, on the other hand, is Shoshone. And she chose not to pass any Shoshone culture on to me. And so it wasn't until I was an adult, because I just, she taught me how to bead when I was 6. So I've been doing this since I was a little kid. But I just always assumed that my native ancestry on her side was like some distant great grandma who was an Indian princess sort of situation. Well, she also kept me from her mother intentionally as a kid. So as an adult, when I was able to actually connect with my grandmother and actually meet my grandmother and develop a relationship with her, I learned that my grandma is actually fucking native.
Oh, wow.
And my grandmother actually raised my mom in Shoshone culture. She cradle boarded my mom and my uncles. She is the one who taught my mother how to bead. She's all of this stuff. But my mom used to, without getting into details, used to tell me really horrible things about my grandmother. So that's just an entirely other thing that I have to deal with and work on, and, my mom's own issues. But so I was raised in Apache culture, but I'm now trying to scramble while my grandma is 82 years old and learn everything I can about Shoshone culture. Because I know nothing about Shoshone culture.
And it's tough. I mean, it's really hard, because that right there is like a prime example of when we talk about generational trauma. Whatever the reason was that her family kept her away from that, it might, there's so much. There's so much. And there's so many reasons why we all feel a little disconnected. Now, true, there's some that don't, that have been raised, and that's a wonderful thing. But there's so many more that haven't been, or, adoption, all of those issues.
Yeah.
And, the residential schools is a huge thing in First Nations. It happened here, in the States. And then it's once, twice, three, thrice, 4 times removed. And now you're sitting here with us, at our age, and we're trying to do it. And now we have kids, and, my kids are like, they know some, but they don't know as much as me. and it's like you don't really want to force it upon them because they weren't really raised in it either. They know the history, you're damn right they know the history and where all of that, but that's their choice, even though that's who they are. And I mean, it's just hard. It's the generational trauma. It
Yeah.
really is.
And Native Wolf, I know that your language is dying and your population is around 4,000. Is that correct? 4,000 Native Wolf? Sorry, I took my glasses off, so excuse me
4,000.
if I reason.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that you all are doing to try to help preserve your language, like maybe recordings or like Diamond Dog has an Apache dictionary? Are you all like maybe thinking of compiling something like that to help preserve your language?
So as far as we have it's an online Passamaquoddy dictionary, and people can go on there and try and learn the language, but as like for someone like me, I'd have to learn it, physical, for someone talking to me and I learning that way because I'm like a hands-on person. But other than that, it's really up to us young kids try and learn it. Like, not really, they're not forcing. Most people don't want to force it. But the language will die with. I mean, without our help, without us trying to learn it, within the next 50 years, it's probably going to be completely gone. And for me, that's the hardest thing because my grandmother, she lost all that as a kid. She was literally stripped of all of her culture because somebody didn't be this natural native person who had amazing culture and stuff, wanted to change what she was, make it them less uncomfortable, less fearful of what their traditions are. And because of that, I pretty much know almost nothing, but I'm working on it. I'm working on learning how to make moccasins. I'm working how to make dream catchers and beading and any other thing that I can possibly get hands on because I don't want to lose that. That's something for me that's everything. That means more to me than anything like physical. Like, hey, I got a painting or I got a drawing, got a piece for yay, woohoo! I want more of my culture, the very thing that was taken from me. So I'm doing my part, and I'm being that people seeing me doing the same thing, they'd be like, wow, I want to learn that too. I want to learn how to keep my culture because without us learning it, it's going to be gone.
I completely
And
understand,
that's
and
exactly
I commend you
Well,
for the age that you are, wanting to lead people by example, and we truly do need more youth across the board for all marginalized communities to be willing to lead by example. And as we're coming up on our last 10 minutes, as always, and if for people tuning in, Native Roundtable is the last Tuesday of every month. So if we didn't get a chance to get to your questions, I always keep a running list. We'll get to them eventually. It might take us 20 years, but we will get to all of your questions. We will. We are a determined group of people. Are there any books that any of you can recommend to the audience to learn about your particular tribes?
So for my tribe in particular, Nancy Miner was my mentor, and she was an amazing historian. And she has 2 books. One of them was called The Light Gray People, which that's what Lipan Apache in our language, Lapayende, translates to the light gray people. That's what we call ourselves.
Oh, okay.
Nde translates to the people, and Lapai means light gray. So our name for ourselves translates to the light gray people. So she has one book called The Light Gray People, and then one book, I'm totally blanking on the name right now, and I can't look it up because I'm using my phone. But her name is Nancy Miner. And she has 2 books about my tribe in particular that are fantastic books about us and about our history in the Texas borderlands. And she was a wonderful woman, wonderful historian, and I miss her. She was great. So those are the ones that I would recommend.
For the Mi'kmaq tribe, which everybody kind of got to know the Mi'kmaq people when you had all of the fishing rights in Nova Scotia and all that happened in the fall of last year. And that's kind of what got our name out there. And as far as Native Wolf is concerned, the Passamaquoddy tribe is a part of the Eastern Woodlands tribes that all kind of come together. So, Passamaquoddies are kind of included in that, even though they're not a federally recognized tribe. I don't think they're one of the 574, but we were not the savages. It is a book written by Daniel Paul. It actually is my father's second cousin that wrote the book. So, so there's a little bit of family pride right there. That's going to give you the period of from European to colonization, when they landed, when they came from England into, when they landed into Nova Scotia. And it is, it's a good starting point, and then from there people can kind of branch out. Now, and there's a ton. I mean, there's a lot. The only thing that I would really try to caution your viewers is, if you're looking for books, and of course the best place is going to be Amazon, or even, if you really want to really take it a step further, every federally recognized tribe has their own website. And, it's always a .gov thing. You can go to the BIA.gov, or you can start looking up and just pick a tribe that you're interested in. If it's the Seminoles, if it's the, if it is the Apache, you want to know about, hey, I need to learn more about these Apache wars that I apparently thought I knew everything about, or, you see, the Navajo have so much representation on TikTok. So a lot of people are just naturally, I think, drawn to it. But, even if you're more interested in the Polynesians and, and what's going on in Hawaii right now, pick one. And if you don't know where to start, be at www.bia.gov. That is the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Okay. They can go, it's a federal site. It's safe. You go on there and you type in list, and it's going to give you the list of the 574 federally recognized tribes. Now, we all know that there's a ton that are not. Okay. But, your best chance of finding books and stuff where you want to learn is you're going to start with one of those. Athabascan, if you want to learn about the Inuk in Alaska, and seal hunting, or, whatever it is, that's where I would suggest, your viewers go to BIA.gov, take a look at the list, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember, or, hey, I live in North Carolina, or, hey, I live in Utah. Let me find out who lived in Utah because it applies to me. And I think everybody wants to be relevant. Everybody wants to be able to relate and be relatable. Pick where you live.
Yeah, nativeland.ca is a great place to look at who land you live on. Native-land.ca. Unfortunately, not all Apache tribes are federally recognized. Okay. Including mine. We're state recognized, but we've been in the process of federal recognition my whole life, because of the Mexico border. because
I get that.
most of our treaties were made with Mexico and not with, we only had 2 treaties made with the US.
I get that.
One made with the Republic of Texas. The rest were made with Spain and Mexico. So that's why we have been
I get that.
my whole life. And then there's, I think, one other band of Apache that's not federally recognized. But state recognized tribes also, there are East Coast tribes a lot of times are not federally recognized either due to removal.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look up which tribes are recognized in the state as well, that can also give you a good resource as well. But
I mean, there's just so much out there, you know, and it's a lifetime of learning. So it really just depends on where you want to take it. You know, are you a history buff? Do you want to learn the unwhitewashing of history? That's where you want to start. Do you want to learn more about why Diamond Dog is so overprotective about her patterns? Then go there. You know,
Right.
if you're more interested in, you know, you're an outdoorsy type of person, and you like camping, fishing, and hunting, and all that kind of stuff. Well, then go look at the tribes that did that. You know, if you're more, I'll give a quick example. If you were raised by a single mother, then you want to look at matriarchal societies as far as indigenous people in US and Canada and Turtle Island, because it directly applies to you.
Mhm.
You know, if you want to look at, you know, I mean, there's just, there's so many sections and sects to it. It's just, you know, it just really depends on what is your personal interest. Where do you want to start?
Sure.
What interests you? And I think that's really, and that's why people get so bogged down, because they see all of these different things. You know, you're like, oh my God, you know, they're losing their language. They're on stolen land. We're still fighting these treaties. All the border crisis. Oh my God, they don't have any regalia. Okay, they're still not running water on Navajo reservations. Like we're trying to stop the pipeline. We're trying to do. Natives are busy. Okay, we're busy people, and we're still having to pay our rent and drive a car and pay our bills, and you know, so it's like we ain't got time for all that other drama because we're busy doing shit. Okay,
Because we don't have privilege. But real quick before we end, Native Wolf, are there any books that you would recommend people read regarding your tribe?
So, like Upriver, Passamaquoddy is one. Then there's like multiple ones on the audio place. I think it's like or something. They have a whole bunch of anything about Passamaquoddy, anything, tradition, whatever. It'll be on audible.com, and I just if you really want to know anything about that, you just look and you'll find a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, the one thing to give you is, if you are interested in something, make sure that you're really interested in it, because then you're going to keep your interest, you're going to like it, you're going to find more, you're going to want more, and that's going to help you a long way.
Yeah. And who knows, you might gain an obsession like me, who keeps a running list of questions.
We love you, Taz.
That has grown tonight.
One book that I always recommend to people, I get asked a lot by people on my TikTok. People are always like, what's a good book about Native American history? And I'm always like, okay, well, that depends. What time period, what area? Like, you're talking about an entire continent and thousands of years. And people are always like, I don't know. One book that I always recommend as a starting point for people, it's not a tribe-specific book, is An Indigenous People's History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. And I think that's a really good starting point introduction to Native history.
Yeah, totally agree. And as always, thank you all for being willing to come on and educate people and help me along my journey. I just didn't want to take the journey by myself. So I figured while I learn, let everybody else learn as well. So until next month, family. And as always, each one teach one, each one reach one. See you all tomorrow. Good night.